You have no idea how much time you need in the water to keep proficient, to make sure that your skill level keep at that very high level. Because when shit goes wrong, and shit goes wrong fast, you need to be like exactly where you're supposed to be. Like you need to have like being perfect and stuff. So
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Growing up in France, Maxime Cheminade would be influenced by one of the greatest spies of all time, James Bond. After watching this film, he would embark on a journey into the aquatic world. Today, he can be found on the island of Koh Tao, educating the public on hyperbaric chambers, exploration with Bottomline Projects, working as a dive medic, changing the narrative on safety, his thoughts on the Avelo System, and much more. Please enjoy. Maxim, how are you doing this wonderful morning?
I'm very, very great. Thank you very much for having me here. How are you?
I am good. I got it's my second cup of coffee in here, so I'm ready to get the day started. And as I was kind of telling you off camera or off recording, I'm just kind of getting everything ready. I'm about to head back to the States for, I think, at least a few weeks. It's such a long trip. If I'm making the trip, I like to go. I can't just do a week. It's such a short amount of time for just the time changes and everything. Like if I go for a week, by the time I'm like adjusted to the time zones, it's like, okay, let's pack the bags and head back to Southeast Asia. So I try to go for a little bit more of a lengthy time. But no, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure you have a super busy schedule, so thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you very much for offering. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. And where are you based again?
So currently I'm based in Koh Tao, Thailand. I'm traveling all around, but this is kind of my home base. It's very nice to be there. I can go diving pretty much any day in the world, any day I want. So it's always nice to have the option.
Awesome, man. So my first question I usually like to ask is, tell me how and why you became a scuba diver. Tell me about that first breath. Was it absolutely amazing? Was it, I absolutely hate this? Was it, this is all right, I think I could do more?
Okay. So actually I started scuba diving my first time. I was very young. I was around 7 years old. My family had small vacation house in a private residence in the south of France, and it was just this year where Tomorrow Never Dies, the James Bond, just came out, and there was this amazing scuba diving scene. And obviously, as any kid that just saw James Bond, I was ecstatic. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I wanted to be James Bond, obviously. And my family, we were not super rich, so we needed to. There was only one activity, one big thing we could get the entire summer, and there was scuba diving. And they were doing this kind of like, the guy that comes, an instructor. You can try scuba diving for around a half hour in a pool and stuff. And the guy was there pretty much every day for a week. I was the most annoying kid you can have. I wanted that much more than anything. My mom was like, "Are you sure this is what you want?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely. There's nothing else." And I remember taking this scuba tank. So you have to imagine like a 7-year-old with like the teeny tiniest fins in the world, no BCD. We're before 2000. I'm a bit older, but before 2000. So the tiniest baby tank that exists, like probably like a 6-liter or something, strapped to like a plastic harness, with a harness and a plastic thing, just clipped to me, and me just going swimming. And the entire dive, all I can remember is me thinking about that scene in James Bond where he's trying to escape from the ship that he's in, because there's a whole thing with a ship and he's trying to escape. And me thinking about this, and this is the only memory I have of it. I remember seeing the pool and scuba diving and the bubbles and everything, but I remember like I was James Bond, and that was it. I was 100% James Bond. And then I came back and I was all calm. And my mom was like, "What happened?" and it all started there. That was my first bubble. My first memory with a scuba tank.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's I remember the movie. It's been such a long time because I think there's at some point, like, you know, watching movies, especially like growing up, you know, yeah, everybody wants to be James Bond, right? So I've seen the movies and made the run, but I need to go back and actually rewatch some of those movies because they're classics for sure.
So if you remember it, it's one of those media guy that stole a missile, and then he's trying to sell it to send it on China with the Chinese government and stuff. And then so James Bond is literally like going to see, found the ship. So he jumped from a plane and he's going diving after it, and I'm like, oh my god, you can jump from a plane and dive after it. How amazing is this? And then he's like finding that Chinese girl that is here also as well. And I mean, this movie has been super important for me for two things. It's just one, diving, and the second was Asia. It's my first time. I was like, oh my god, this country looks amazing. I want to be there. What is this? And that's literally like that movie has been doing a lot to me. So big thanks to Pierce Brosnan.
On a because I know there's a place in Thailand. I'm sure that you've been, but there's a place in Thailand called is it called the James Bond Island or James
Bond Rock? Yeah.
Yes.
So so literally where the scene I'm talking to you that made me dive, like that started my entire diving career and my passion for diving. This is called James Bond Rock. It's actually they say in the movie that it's like the Along Bay or something, but it's actually in Krabi. Koh Tao Island, Krabi Thailand. It's just beautiful rocks that formation that are absolutely insane. It's like having pillars out of the water. It's stunning.
Yeah,
it's in the other side. It's not where I am, but it's in the other side, and it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually my mother is from Thailand, so I'm a half Thai person. Although I'm very bad, I don't know the language. I have. Yeah, it's a long story, but the first time I ever went scuba diving was in Thailand on Phi Phi Island, actually. It's funny because I have so many childhood memories, but then I went back years later as like an adult backpacking around, and that was one of the first things that kind of captured me when I was heading out to the Phi Phi Islands is the formations that come up out of the water, just these massive like pillars, essentially look so amazing with the blue, turquoise blue water, clear. I just remember being like blown away by that whole area.
That's this area actually. The James Bond Rock, and this is literally this area.
So no, it's because I remember hearing about it, but then it was just kind of backpacking around Thailand. I was like, oh, I'll go check it out, and then one thing leads to another, and then I'm off in this destination, and yeah, but. And then real quick, so you grew up in France?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. That first time scuba diving, was that just kind of like was it a certification or was it just like discover? Okay.
It's just a discover, just a try in a pool. I left scuba diving for quite a few years after that. I went back to it a little bit when I was 14, 15, part of a club. I had a diving club in where I come from. So I come from a region called Auvergne, which is center France, where there is absolutely no diving. There is hills, there is volcanoes, but diving, absolutely not. So I was a very active kid. I used to do like a lot of sports, so karate, kayaking, scuba diving, climbing. So, I was the kind of kid that doesn't want to stay where he is. So I used to be in a diving club there for a few years, but I really started diving a little bit later. I entered the military. I spent quite a few years there where I got to do a lot of diving. That took me around probably like 4 or 5 years. And I dived in the military and came out of it and left diving again for a few years. I had a partner at a time that was like, hey, let's go on holidays in Thailand. I was like, I can't take holidays like this. I'm like, how long do you want to get? I want to leave for a month and a half. It's like, a month and a half? Are you crazy? Like, I have work to do, Like, I can't just leave like this. She won, and we ended up actually in Phi Phi, Thailand. And she's like, oh, scuba diving. I'm like, oh, it's been a while. Like, let's go for a dive, So I ended up in a dive center, and they're like, do you have your open water? I'm like, an open what? I've been diving for a few years. I have experience as a diver. I used to dive with breeders. I used to dive like very military technical stuff, but I had no cert. I had like like you have basically a kind of a certificate from the military, but nothing that has any value. So then I redid all of my confined, my open water, my advanced, all of it on a bunch. Basically, they had SSI was just a start at the time, and I had a book, an SSI book actually, like no app, no fancy thing. So the instructor like, okay, so how many dives you have? Well, I have a few thousand. Like, okay. So I could just jump from a few levels already, get a few cards certified, and then I pretty much redid everything. I came back to France for a few months, and then I was like, okay, I just need to go back to diving properly. I did a dive master and an instructor course, and then I never came back to France.
Oh, that's amazing. So having that prior knowledge of diving, when you actually started going through like the open water course, the advanced, how did you take to the skills and the training? Was it something that was super easy, or was it a little bit challenging?
So it's actually very different. In the military, buoyancy exists absolutely nowhere. So that actually became like, it was a bit different. It was very different, even compared to club diving and what we call nowadays recreational diving in the industry. It was a very different environment. It was a very different way of learning. Sure, I could clear a mask, like that's no problem. I never liked it. I still don't like. Fast forward 15 years after, I still don't like it. I teach it pretty much every day, but I hate it. Like, I'm good at it, so it doesn't have to like it,
Yeah. No, for sure.
Like you have procedures that are just a bit different. It's just okay, I can adapt it and let's see what happened. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Very cool experience. And even, like it just, at the beginning I was like, okay, I know how to dive, but at the end, really going through skills and actually seeing a different way of doing things helped a lot. It helped a lot just to go back to a certain path, which was very different in the training. I didn't have to jump in a pool, go down on one breath with my hands attached, and then go and grab some dive gear and come up. That wasn't part of your open water course. It was a bit more gentle into like very easy, very smooth kind of diving. I really enjoyed.
That's funny. So it reminds me of I've worked with a few like commercial divers, people that are very like, we go to the bottom, we stay planted to the bottom, we do our work, and then we come up. And I remember like the first couple times, because we had to work, I'm coming from a recreational scuba background, buoyancy is everything, don't touch the bottom, you're going to damage the environment. And then I come in with these commercial divers who literally, what are fins? Like, let's just plant ourselves on the bottom. We're here to do some work. And I was so like blown away by it. And it's very different for sure. Like, but different worlds doing different things. So it's, but that's funny. There's no buoyancy.
No, pretty much. I mean, there is no real buoyancy. You learn a little bit of it, but it's very mission oriented,
Yeah.
And buoyancy is not part of a mission. So yeah, like you're not gonna stick to the bottom, but if you had to, you would do it,
Yeah. So you went through the process, and then you said you became a dive master. Mm-hmm. A question I always like to ask is, sure, going from that recreational, fun diving, and I know there, the rescue or stress and rescue, depending on whatever agency you're taking it from. That kind of starts, to me, that's one of the first courses where it kind of starts to change your thinking. And I don't know if you had this thinking mentality before you got into it from your background, but when you went into the professional side of it, how was that transition where it's like, okay, now it's more than just me? And I know, there's always the team mentality, like in scuba diving, right? We never dive alone. We always have a dive buddy. But now it's like I'm not in charge, but I'm responsible for these people that I'm going in the water with. How was that transition for you? Or did you have that coming from your background?
I would say it's really became during my dive master more than my rescue. Rescue was more like, again, I mean, I think the way rescue is being taught and also like being approached from the agency is, I mean, it's a nice first step into a really good in the direction, you know, in the direction of like taking charge of being responsible. But ultimately, I think you really take care and you really start to, I mean, personally, I really started to become very conscious of this when I did my dive master, and I was like, okay, from now on, my dive buddies and the people that I'm responsible for, which is, again, even as dive master, you could technically not be responsible for anyone. If they sign like the waiver and everything, technically they are the one responsible. I never took it that way. I'm always thinking that this is my group, I'm responsible for everyone. Depending on their level of experience, regardless of what they have experience for, I would be responsible for them. And I have a very cool story for you a bit later about that. But yeah, I think it really started during my dive master, when I was like, okay, like those people, they have been trained, but you don't really know how they have been trained. They want to see stuff and they want to do it, but you still have that part of safety, and you have to make them fully secure first, and then you can just like have fun. It doesn't matter, like you can and I think that's something I've sticked during my entire career so far, is like I will always having this layer of security, this layer of safety, and then because as soon as you have safety, it's fine, you can do anything. But if you don't have safety, then don't start to show stuff and things, because your group become a mess, and then you start to get very in trouble, and you can hurt someone very, very easily.
Yeah, so, yeah. No, for sure.
I would say my dive master started there.
I know that. Well, I don't want to say that there's a transition. I mean, let me figure out how to say this. Is I know that there is I don't want to say movement, but that there needs to be more of a focus on that in open water, right? Like that there needs to be more of like, hey, and I know that there is. I guess it just depends on where you're getting trained, who you're getting trained by, right? So, but there is that, like, because I know when I first started, it's like, oh, we have the group, we have the dive team, but I feel like, yeah, you don't really kind of get that until you start moving through higher levels, whereas like maybe it should be introduced. I mean, I don't know. That's a whole nother subject, I guess.
I mean, we can talk about this if you want. I'm very agreeing with this. I think, I mean, the open water, the big problem we have right now, I mean, even as an instructor here in Koh Tao, I see it literally all the day, is you need the industry. The open water course is a 3-day course, pretty much, here in Koh Tao. It has never been designed as a 3-day course. It's been designed in section, and there's a minimum. And as soon as there's a minimum, people say, oh, this is the level you need to be at. And I think that's one of the problem, is if the open water was a 5-day course, then everybody would have to do a 5-day course, because it will be a minimum. But in the small amount of time that people have to actually start diving, you just can't physically introduce everything, right? Are all the skills the most needed? I don't know. Like we could literally debate any skills. Like remove and replace your BCD underwater. Is it really something you need to be proficient on all the time? We can debate, if you have somebody with you that is actually doing and helping you, while the skills, those things, maybe you could reallocate that time to something a bit more like team building. But you never really build a team in any courses until you start to dive master. You know what? I think even at an instructor level, you're still not building a team. I think you only start building a team when you start to go to technical diving or to agency like GUE, DIR, etc., where team is the essence of the entire teaching. I don't think that a dive master or an instructor is very team oriented in terms of course. I think it's a very amazing professional and dive leader profile, but we're not really talking about teaming here. We don't rely on each other. Like I've never seen a dive master relying on, let's say, an open water diver that is next to him. He's in charge of them, but we're still not a team. We're still not sharing there. We have a dive leader left and and the right you have an open water, they are not a team together. Is one in charge. I mean, they are a team. They do dive together, but there is no exchange of skills in between both. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And I think that's where, I mean, I think for personally, I do a lot of technical diving, and I think for me that's where technical diving is. The base is very different. Is we are a team. We are coming with a certain amount of skills. We're going to do a dive. We're going to plan it a certain way. And I find personally technical diving much more relaxing mentally than recreational.
I can understand that. It's kind of a tough, because I was having this conversation with, I can't remember who, somebody recently, and it's one of those things where, you come into recreational diving and there has to be that balance, right? So you don't want to drive them with so much information that they're like, this is something I don't want to do. This is I thought it was like this fun recreational sport, which I do believe there's that side of it, the fun, it's recreational. But there's also a risk, obviously, right? We're going into a foreign environment. There's heightened risk on the activity that we're doing right now. But I think it's hard to find that, like, okay, how do we find that balance where you want to, amplify the importance of certain aspects, but say, hey, I know that, this is something that you're probably only going to be doing 5 times a year, right? Like, I understand it's like, just because I go hit a couple golf balls doesn't mean I want to be the next Tiger Woods, right? Like, I don't need to be that person, but hitting a golf ball, there's a lot less danger. Well, I guess, it depends on who's hitting the golf ball. But so it's such a, I mean, it's I don't want to say it's a never ending conversation, but it's one of those things that I guess needs to be addressed more. And maybe I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's addressed quite a bit, but it's one of those things, like, how do we find that balance of where it's still recreational and fun, but it's not like a military driven, like, you need to do all of this, kind of like how, the early days of PADI, or before PADI, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, there is still a few agencies that teaches that way, or a few places that teaches that way. I agree with you. I think, and scuba is changing as well, and I have the feeling it's changing in a good way. It has been more open. There's been more open of the problem that we have in the industries and stuff like this. I really think that it's getting better, and like I spoke with a few people into different diving agency, and I know that those problems are being addressed. It's still a slow moving industry. This is unfortunately the way we are, but I know that this is something that they really have to. They see the problem as well. It's just harder for them to respond.
Yeah. No. And so let me ask you this. So because this is a conversation that I've had a couple times where basically like, okay, someone like you, for example, you're quite heavily involved in the industry. I feel that I talk to a lot of people in the industry. I usually surround myself with people that are heavily involved in the industry. And is our perception skewed because of the fact that we see and talk to people that know that there should be a higher level of training, but when you have someone that's completely green, fresh, new, doesn't know anything about scuba diving, maybe they saw the James Bond movie, right? And they're like, I want to go scuba dive, right? And, do they come in thinking like, oh, I need this higher level of safety? Or is that just something that we chat about once you kind of become a little bit more involved and spend some time in the industry?
I think many people are very afraid about safety, about talking about this, because they're like, oh, if I start to speak about safety, I'm going to deter my customer to come and do it. I work here in Koh Tao as well as a hyperbaric medic, and sometimes I have people asking questions. And there was this dive center, I won't name, obviously, that asked me, and they were like, oh, like you shouldn't tell to people that they can't dive. And I'm like, that's your opinion, but medically they're not allowed to dive. This is dangerous. Yeah, but they want to have fun on holidays. They don't want to think about their problem. And this was a dive center that had, that's the manager I had this conversation with. And I'm like, what you're seeing is a holiday person that is going to have fun, and probably nothing is going to happen to them, and that's great. But at the end, you're taking a risk on their health and safety. You're gonna mask the health and safety problem that could potentially happen just because you want them to have a nice time and be in your dive center. And I think we are very afraid of talking about safety and try to say, okay, this is still an extreme sport, even though it's cool. Like, oh, you have the PADI, everybody can dive kind of like campaign. Everybody can dive. Maybe everybody shouldn't dive.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. No.
And you know what I mean. And it's also we need to be able to speak to people openly about, hey, we do have like, this is still a sport that comports some risks. We are a very safe industry, but there is a few risks still here, and be open about that. And I think if the risks are managed very well, you can explain to them. Literally this morning, so I went running and I passed by the dive center I'm currently doing a lot of stuff with, and some people had a health and safety question, and they're like, yeah, it's a family with a daughter here, and the daughter has some health issue, and she's like, yeah, that's safe. You still gonna need to go to a doctor, but here and here and here is what happened in the water, and that's why we need a doctor to sign on it. And I think if we explain to people a bit better and we take the time, people are gonna understand. But we shouldn't just mask it and try to say, oh, don't worry, it's all fine, it's only bubbles. Don't worry.
Because another question I was just thinking to myself is, and this is just speaking for me, but I feel like there's probably like quite a bit of people out there is, so when I remember the very first time I walked into that dive shop in Koh PP, I walked in there because I'd been snorkeling, showed up to Thailand, bought a cheap little like snorkel kit just to go, spend some more time on the beach. And I walked into the dive shop because my curiosity was just like, oh, okay, what's the scuba diving thing? And my biggest fear at the time, I remember the dive center, the guy working at the dive center, he was like, oh, it's going to be great. And he's like, we're going to go see sharks. And immediately I was like, what? No, like sharks? Like, I don't want to go and see a shark. And he's like, no, they're not dangerous. My fear base was like the external factor, like something's going to attack me, not necessarily like what can happen to me, the dangers that could be involved, because I feel like I'm sure I can't remember exactly. The memory gets away from me. I don't know how much they talked about the pressures, and I mean, obviously there was the equalizing. We jumped into the pool. It was literally like the 15 minutes in the pool, and then we're out in the open ocean. So I don't remember if there was any like physics involved on like the dangers involved. I just remember all I was thinking is like, I don't want to see a shark. That was like the danger factor for me at the time. You live and you learn, but now I want to see sharks all day, but I guess depending on the shark. But so I wonder how much that goes into it, if it's more of an external danger that people are thinking about rather than an internal, and how much is actually communicated to that person going into the Discover Scuba Dive. Obviously it happens in open water, but I'm assuming Discover Scuba Dives are probably a lot more, the numbers are a lot higher.
That's a debate I had with a few people the last weeks, is if you look into a Discover Scuba Dive based on industry, and SSI will actually tell you, do not teach more than they should know. And you look into an open water, day one, you're roughly in the same area. You're bringing in both cases somebody that has never been in the water for the first time. Why do you want to make one lesser than the other?
Yeah.
Why are you actually actively trying to withdraw information that would be very necessary for your diver, just to understand a little bit more? You don't have to go into partial pressure and stuff. You can do that in the next days and stuff if they really like it. But at least a minimum about pressure and volume and how it happens. You don't have to scare them. You're like, oh, if you hold your breath, your lung are gonna explode. You don't have to tell them that. But you can tell them, say, hey, if you take a balloon of 5 liter, you bring it into 10 meter, it's 2.5 liter because of pressure. It makes sense. And then you can bring that back to the regulator. That's actually how I teach. I enjoy teaching basic divers, like brand new people that have never been to the water. It's something I do more by passion than actually by necessity. But I really enjoy introducing that world to people. I think there is a lot of pride and a lot of like, I know many instructors don't like it, but I really enjoy actually like taking people and seeing their eyes for the first time and seeing the world that I see pretty much every day, and then bringing them, and then, you know, like trying to actually maybe on some part of it, maybe not change their life, but actually bring a little bit more. It's like, okay, now you understand when you're on a boat what's going on under it, you know, like, and you know, like, I think withholding information, especially on safety, that it is about sharks, because I also speak about marine life, obviously. Just doing a 15-minute briefing and then go for the water, which now I tend to do an hour and a half, just to get, you know, like, everybody seated and then having like all the questions, everybody. And it's, for me as an instructor, a very nice way to judge the level of confidence or overconfidence, or actually how stressed, I would say, they are, when you actually start to speak about diving, and you explain, this is how it happened, this is actually how we're going to do things, and like you get a feel for it. And I really enjoy that. I think it just makes you closer to your students and make better diver at the end, even just for a day.
No, actually, that is like massive kudos to you, because like what you just said, I do know that once people kind of get to that higher level of diving, that they necessarily, especially as instructors, they don't want, they kind of get away from the open waters or even the Discover Scuba dives, because and I guess I understand it from both sides, but I do agree on, I enjoy being a part of that, because I taught actively a few years ago. It's been a while, but when you see that person, their first breath underwater, I mean, that's literally why I start the podcast, like, tell me about that first breath, because it is a life-changing experience when people, you see that like aha moment, and you're like, this person's gonna go on and do amazing things, or hopefully we don't need this person in the water again. I guess it could go either way. But let me ask this. Sorry, I should have probably. I'm going to bring it back a little bit.
Go ahead.
So you made it to Thailand. You did your training. How did you actually end up in Koh Tao? I mean, I know it's a very popular destination, but how did you make your way to the island? And as soon as you got there, did you stay?
Okay, that's two, like one short question, one long one. So I was living in Paris. It was like winter. I really wasn't happy personally. My personal life was a massive wreck. Very overworked, like doing it, like very burned out. And there is this exhibition called Salon de la Plongée, which is your equivalent of Boat or Mide or ADEX, but in France. And there was a dive center, a French dive center, that was a Koh Tao dive center that was in like as an exhibitor.
Yeah, yep.
And they were proposing, like, you know, I was looking around like, dive master, maybe not, I don't know. Basically what I wanted was 2 months of peace and quiet and diving, pretty much. And there was a few, you know, there was some in Europe, there was some in Curacao, there was some and there was like one Koh Tao, like Koh Tao, whatever. So I took, you know, all of the thing, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, like that sounds cool. You know, I met the instructor that was there, the DMI. DMI seemed to be okay, and I was like, okay, well, why not? So I moved there. Was April 2017? Yeah, 2017. I did my training with them, and I wasn't planning to do my instructor. I was like, I like diving. I just want to take month and a half, like 2.5 months, maybe 3 months of holidays. I want to just peace and quiet, the ocean. Don't just talk to me. And life decided differently. In that meantime, my personal life became even worse, meaning that I lost the job that I had there. My partner at the time, we broke up. Like everything, literally every single thing that was tying me back to France, literally doesn't exist anymore. So I was like, okay, well, I have a choice. I can either choice A, go back to Paris, in a place where I can try to rebuild my life there, or I can B, try to see if this co-thing could work. And I chose option B. I stayed there, did my instructor, and I think this is one of the most underrated thing for me, but like that changed everything. I did my instructor course in that French shop, and I did my instructor in English, which is very weird for French. my English wasn't the greatest at the time. I was a very Franglish English, like very Frenchy. You can still hear the French accent, but like I could much better at the time. But like it was rough. And I did my instructor with two guys from another dive shop here, and they were from an like international Australian dive shop. And they're like, "Oh yeah, Max, you should come and like have a drink with us." Like, yeah, I don't know. So I went to my dive center. I went back there and had a beer, and they're like, oh, "Okay, well, we're all going home, so good night." And I'm like, should I go to that party or should I not go to that party? And I was like, it just hit me. I was like, you've been here, you left France, you're not coming back, and you met the same people that you have met in France, and it's literally you are in your small little France, but in Thailand. Like, what's the point? Like, you wanted to be an expat, you're here, what are you doing? So I went to the party, met many people. I started to speak more English. Started to have an English level that bring me back to like permit me to teach in English, and it just all went this way. And I've never looked back, and I've never came back to France, just only for holidays.
That's amazing, man.
That's actually the story behind it.
That's absolutely amazing, dude. I love hearing things like that, because it's and it sucks, obviously, like what happened back in France, but it was almost kind of like a silver lining, right? Like it all happened. Pushed you into a new direction, and I mean, it seems like you're doing a lot of stuff out there, and so that's amazing, man. I think that's such a good story, dude.
Yeah, that's the weirdest story.
So how and when did you kind of start moving into, I hate to say higher risk technical diving, but obviously it kind of goes hand in hand, but moving into where it's like, and I do think it's kind of a natural progression for certain people, like, hey, I want to go a little bit deeper, but the stuff that you're doing now, like you're in the overhead, you're part of exploration projects. When did that shift kind of started happening?
Okay, so during my DM, I did my side mount. So it was the very beginning of side mount. Like nowadays, you go to a dive site in Koh Tao, you will see side mount diver. Back in 2016, 2017, side mount was this very odd thing. Like, what are you doing? Like you shouldn't have two tank on your side. It was the very beginning of Steve Bogart's YouTube video in the cave in Mexico. The small razor harness started to put it out there. X Deep was just started to push the stealth tool. Like it literally very beginning of like mainstream side mount. So I did my side mount course, and I was like, okay, I'm in love with this. I did my TDI Deco Pro extended range, like all of the like until 60 year. I was already doing technical diving before, like kind of with the military, but nothing like as official as this. And I kind of stayed to the level for a while. I then started to play with hypoxic trimix gases, having always open circuit. And I had a few like very close call with open circuit diving, so open circuit and trimix. So I left it aside for a little bit. And during COVID, my passion for cave, I was doing a bit of cave as well, but my passion really came back. I was like, okay, I really want to go back to it. And I was in Malta for a bit, and I met this amazing instructor, Kat Brown. I don't know if she's still working at SSI, but she used to work at SSI at the time. She was doing technical diving, and she basically brought me back to technical and to like the love of it, the love of open circuit technical. I was one of the first guy being trained on Mares Horizon as an XR diver, so like really the beginning of XR program from SDI from SSI. And that story that I was talking to you a bit earlier when I said teamwork. Kat, actually, I went into the technical extended range trimix, so 60 meter normoxic trimix course. I went very, very confident. and lesson learned. She switched the MOD, the maximum operating depth that we have. So on each cylinders, we have a maximum depth that those cylinder can be used. And me being super confident, I checked my stuff. I was supposed to be the dive leader that day. She's a huge experienced diver, like compared to me, was insanely experienced. So I was like, she knows what she's doing. And we arrived to 56, 57, and she asked me for gas switches, and something felt wrong. But the MOD was wrong on the tank, but she wanted to switch, and I didn't know what to do, and I ended up taking the wrong decision. And like all of this, just to go back to that story, the lesson was that regardless of who you are, your level of certification, of who you think you are in the industry, or doesn't matter, you can all make mistakes. And underwater, you have the same level; you're equal. Like as part of a team, you're not. There's not one that is higher than the other. It's we're all taking a decision, and this saved me. And we had a couple of like instances with expedition later on that actually I remind that myself all the time. So, Kat, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you very much for the lesson. I will always. I learned it. I got laughed at a lot at the dive center because of this. Many people took that as a joke. Oh, you killed your instructor, ha ha ha. But it was one of the biggest lessons I think I've learned in technical. It's just don't go overconfident. Just verify, check, make sure that everybody in the team is like set up. Doesn't matter where you are and who you are. Stuff can always happen. And then after this, I didn't went to a cave for quite a few years at a time. I went back to Koh Tao in 2023, very beginning of 23, and I started working on a project called Bottomline Projects, which is an expedition team, very kind of well known now in Southeast Asia. At that time, it was more of a club of friends that used to do stuff together. There is the main founder, Miko Pasi, is the driving machine behind this, but it was more of a club, and we were like, hey, we should stop it. And like Miko, just give me 2 years, let's see what we can do with it. Like we have a foundation, it's amazing. I love the project, I love the idea. We just started mine diving in Thailand at that time. We wanted to take that and see where it can go. So that's actually how I started to go more into expedition diving. I always had this passion for expedition. I always had this passion to like go and discover new stuff, go and see where I can go and see where we can go and what we can find. I mean, those places, sometimes there is nothing for days or weeks or months, and then sometimes you find something and you're like, oh my god, that was so worth it. So I went back to technical diving, started to do more rebreather dives. Never wanted to teach it, so I'm not teaching technical. I prefer being behind the camera, which that also came during my instructor time. Just to go back a bit, started to play with cameras very early on, and decided that for me that the teaching part of it wasn't it wasn't really worth the investment. I like teaching, but I don't like it as much as being behind a camera or doing safety or diving medicine. So I decided to take the other path, which is like behind the camera and taking care of people. Yeah, that's actually how I ended up there. So really, like, obviously I had to go and get trained into the environment, go back to it takes a lot of time practice. Even though I was already a cave diver, it took me quite a few months to actually go back to being very confident in there. Also to a physical level, like sports at this point, expedition diving is paramount. You need to be like it's all about, it's not only just what's going on in water, it's also your lifestyle, it's also training every day. That it is this morning, just before that, I just went, I did an 8k run and run pretty much 50 to 70 kilometer a week. This is part. Oh, wow. This all goes into the focus of I want to be ready for those expedition. You need a lot of stamina. It's not just diving. That is also what is so passion. The passion of it is actually also there as you want to train yourself extremely well for those environments, because this is a very high risk environment and you want to train yourself extremely well. So part of your routine is actually going towards being fit, healthy, and going to help you actually achieve those goals. Sometimes in expedition we have to walk long time in very humid environment with a lot of heavy gear, and if you just can't do it, then it's like there is no point, you know. So like I find that's very passionate. I'm very passionate about this as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And I would even say definitely would say Bottomline Projects kind of, I mean, they put mine diving in Thailand on the map. Like you're probably the premier group that are doing a lot of exploration out in Thailand, Southeast Asia. So no, that's awesome. And what you're saying about expeditions, like I've spoke to a few explorers on the podcast, and that's the biggest thing is all the hardship, to the point where when you finally do get a chance to get in the water, that's the easy part, right? It's like trekking through the jungle and the humidity, the bugs, just all these different factors going into it, to where it's like, oh, we can finally get into the water. And that's, most of the battle, and to be fit and ready to do all that stuff. So I went and did this kind of like, it's a very touristic, run kind of these cave expeditions in Vietnam, right? Like it's very catered to. I mean, it's not like completely 5-star or anything like that. Like you're actually sleeping out in the Vietnam jungle and everything. But I remember when you're signing up for it, they ask you all these questions like, when was the last time you went hiking? Send us a picture of you hiking. Just all these questions. I'm like, man, this is a whole thing. And basically they said, they're like, yeah, we get people, like, once we hike a couple kilometers in, a car cannot come and pick you up if you just decide not to do it, right? Like, it's like, no, you have to hike back out. And sometimes you're going uphill and downhill. I mean, they do some pretty, I don't want to say extreme, because the things that you're doing are probably more extreme, or definitely more extreme. But they basically like are vetting people to say, hey, this isn't for everybody. and this is like an easy trek, not the type of like, oh, we're going into uncharted territory to go jump in the water and explore these places,
I mean, there is, like, for me, expedition, like when I get to go and take the car, and we took the night ferry here, I think this is that's kind of the celebration, like we're just going all together and exploring a new place. And it's dangerous, there is risk. I got hurt quite a few times now already, but it's like, it's all of that hard work you put every day, like that discipline, that commitment. And it's not only physically, it's also mentally, right? This is a whole synergy. It's not only like an example, like I went diving with my entire cave kit the other day, and I went to an afternoon dive, which is your boring 12-meter, very shallow dive, and I was in full tech gear, 4 tanks, side mounts, rebreathers, hell, like literally the entire thing. And people were like, "What are you doing? You're just showing off." And I'm like, you have no idea how much time you need in the water to keep proficient, to make sure that your skill level keep at that very high level. Because when shit goes wrong, and shit goes wrong fast, you need to be like exactly where you're supposed to be. Like you need to have like being perfect and stuff. So there is this, we could talk about this. This was in a podcast not long ago from Patrick Whitman, where he said in it, and I think this is a very big thing about the industry as well. He was like, if you think about any athlete, like any sports, let's say Michael Jordan, and he's training pretty much, he was training pretty much every day, right? I mean, you can't be at that level without training basketball for every day. Can you imagine just he's doing 3 dunk or three score, and you give him a card and you say, "Thank you very much, it was amazing," and you don't have to train anymore? Do you really think that this is how basketball works? Not really, right? The man has to train every day. Why are we thinking in diving that it's enough to give you a card that says CCR full cave diver, and not train it for a year and think that you're still at the level to do those kind of dives? And I think that's fair, Like I think we should keep like any diver, and that's I think the biggest thing between the biggest difference in terms of mindsets between a technical diver or recreational diver and technical or somebody like this, and like a professional explorer, is we know that we have to train. This is skill that gets lost. My skill gets lost. as a photographer, I barely use lines. When I went back the other day, my line work was awful, which I've been told by my fellow explorers. So I've been picking lines and practicing because I lost my edge also as well on this, and this is thing we should work on. I mean, it's a pretty much a full-time job, even though sometimes it's a bit hard to the money side of it's a bit weird, but the commitment we need to have is not only just the fun time and booking a holiday, and there it has to be done before, and that it is knowledge, that it is safety, that it is physical health, that it is lifestyle, mental health. All of this has to be assessed before we start to do anything, and I think that's where it's so passionate. It's so cool.
For sure, because it's I mean, once you're out there, that's all you have, right? Like, you don't have these other things that you can draw from. It's your skill and experience going into it. So I completely agree. I completely agree to that. Speaking of, well, I don't know if it is your full-time job, but you work at the Hyperbaric, or you what is your work at the Hyperbaric Chamber? What is the work that you do?
So I'm a dive medic there. It's not really full-time because there is it's more like when there is a case, then I would work. So it's not really freelance either. So we have a Hyperbaric Chamber here in Koh Tao that is part of the SSS network, and I work there as a dive medic and sometimes supervisor. So when there is any suspected case of DCS or any kind of diving emergency, we get called. We try to assess and see actually if is it DCS or not, or we are there to help doctors to make decisions. Diving illnesses can be very weird and very tricky to actually to see. So even doctors here that goes to hospital, sometimes they don't really understand fully the dive emergency or the diving itself, and they have amazing doctors like Dan that understand that amazingly but are not on the field. So we're basically that link in between where we can go to a doctor like people at Dan and say, hey, I have a case, this is what we have. This what we see. The doctor says this and that, but he's not sure. Me personally, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? What would you recommend? What's your thing? And if we do have an actual DCS case that requires a chamber, then I would sometimes go inside the chamber with them, so literally take care of them as a dive medic, the entire treatment. I could operate the chamber, or I could just being the supervisor, writing medical reports and being the link in between doctors, insurance, patient, family, etc. So that's basically what I do here.
Okay, and did you have how did you get to be a dive medic? What was your background that led up to that?
Funny one. A friend of mine got banned.
Oh, okay.
A friend of mine got banned. I really enjoy the medical side of things. I think it's a hard job. It is not something but I was really doing some expedition, and I really wanted to go into the medical side of things. So I wanted to go and do what I call my DMT, which is the diving medical technician, which is hyperbaric medicine, emergency medicine for diving. I volunteer as well for the rescue team here, so actual rescue. Therefore, I'm also did what we call MIRA course, which is the medicine in a remote area. Very, very nice to actually stabilize people. I've really liked this kind of field. And then I got the opportunity to see the chamber and get introduced to the chamber team when my friend got DCS. So they're like, hey, we're actually looking for people. And I'm like, that's cool, because I'm actually interested to work there. I did a training course with the chamber because they have a specific training course for their network, which is fine. So I did the training course and then started basically working there on top. So it's a case to case basis. We have an on-call or rotation when there is especially during high season, right now in Koh Tao, we kind of have a lot of calls, which luckily do not end up being a chamber. Most of them are not DCS. And only a small fraction of them actually end up being a patient that we're going to treat. But that's the thing. Because, I don't have enough time in my day job. I needed to have a second and a third one.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about chambers? So I know in major cities, right? So I know that there was I'm very bad on what chambers are up to date, but I know that there's like, say the chamber in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there is a dive community in the Central Texas area. I know that there's, they probably get like random cases from time to time that have to do with diving. So what are those chambers being used for? I know that there's like burn victims or other things that they're being used for, but like, so a dive chamber in Koh Tao, I'm assuming that's more for diving related things.
You're 100% right. So you can use what's called HPO or hyperbaric oxygen for many things. You can train burn victims. You can go with carbon monoxide poisoning. You can do aftercare in hospital, etc., etc. In SSS, so in the entire network, I think 95% of our chamber can do hospital care. We could do hospital care, but we are not. We are only there for diving emergency. So if we are a little bit special, we are only treating diving emergency. Any patient that would like to do hospital care or needs to would be redirected to a chamber that is a bit better, like some different chamber that we have in different places with a hospital next to it. We do have a hospital, but we're only there for diving. We're all divers. The entire staff are dive instructors that have also like this capacity as a medic. Some of them are very advanced EMT from the US. Some others have very high level of knowledge in neurosciences. So like we're very like a bunch of dive professionals that are very passionate about diving, and at the same time that have medical knowledge and capacity to do that. But we're not interested. I mean, we're not doing any kind of HBO treatment. Also because in case something happens, you want to be 24/7 ready, and you want to be ready for a patient anytime. And if we do hospital care, then we wouldn't be that ready. So the chamber rather not treating that and obviously losing money and being ready for any kind of diving emergency right now than the opposite.
Okay. And so actually that's the next question, and I think it was basically just one of the last things that you said, that they're losing money. Like, how is this funded? Like, how I always kind of want, because I know that I want to say there was an article maybe in depth last couple of years where there's chambers that have been closing down because they don't have the funds to run them. Mm-hmm. Is it like a group? You said there's the group that you're working with?
It's a group, yeah. It's a group. It's a private chamber. It's mostly, luckily we're in Thailand, which means that running costs are lower than you would have, as an example, Austin, Texas. It's easier for us to keep it open. It is still private. Luckily in Thailand, and that's I think very aware, is every single dive shop and every single diver is insured towards the dive shop. So luckily we won't refuse. And let's be honest, if somebody is very, very hurt, even if they don't have insurance and they can't pay for it, we will still not refuse them, because it's not who we are. We will figure it out. That's not a problem. But the most important thing here, and I think it was in depth, as you said, chamber are closing because they're also in places where they don't really have any, like they don't really have any hospital, or sometimes other hospitals are taking their own chamber and then they're not using them. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. Luckily here we have an amazing diving community, and like there is no way this chamber will close anytime soon. We have too much, like we're too close to the community and we're too needed by the community for having this chamber closing. So that's nice. Like we also do, like we try our best to avoid people going there, which again it's a very contradicting thing, because it's a private thing, so obviously private means making money, but us as dive medic, we're trying our best to actually not bring people there. So we're gonna be doing tours of the chamber. So we're gonna bring pretty much any dive shop in the island, or any person that wanted to come and see. You can do a 2-hour tour where we explain to you what DCS is, what it isn't, how to recognize it. We won't take you on chamber dive, but you can go in the chamber and we explain to you pretty much every single thing. And we charge a teeny tiny bit of money for that. And with this, we try to actually make sure that we can have all costs covered, at least for the building, So, there's those things that are actually the community is doing, and we try to do for the community as well. We do a lot of things voluntarily, like those kind of things. This is something I would do voluntarily. I would take off my day a few hours and then just try to explain to people why chamber are important, what knowledge is important to them. And then we held that this knowledge actually, because we realize again, we just talk about this, many people in the dive industry, they don't really get the knowledge during their course, especially about safety, because it's still very taboo actually. It's a very topic we don't want to bring too much, we talk about it during the open water, a little bit in the rescue and react rights, but that's it. You don't really speak too much about emergency. And we try to get the knowledge back up to future professionals that are going to be teaching that, and say, hey, I actually know a little bit more than just what the manual say, because I went to the chamber, I spoke to the guys, or like people that have questions, they can always ask us questions and we're always happy to answer them. Like trying to be actually like more involved and more like part of the community, because this is also where sometimes, as you said, like when the chambers are closing, that would be a disastrous here, because that means the closest chamber from here will be Phuket, and Koh Tao to Phuket is a long ride.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Well, so we're also very dependent on community here, and the community is very happy with us. So I'm very, like, it's very nice to see as well, and this kind of thing still interest people, and they want to know more. And
no, I love it, dude. I absolutely love it, because it's almost kind of goes back to the team, right? Like the community is just a bigger team of
Exactly.
people coming together to make these things happen. Because that's one thing that I think, I don't know if it, like you said, the safety thing is kind of a taboo, so it's not, people aren't really speaking about it, but I just think of like there's all these these remote dive areas where if somebody gets hurt, it's like, where's the nearest chamber? And I know there's sources that you could go, and I know Dan's obviously very good at providing this information, but it's like, man, what does one a person do? Because let's face it, like I've been to, I feel, some pretty remote dive areas where the safety factor is a little 6-liter bottle of oxygen, and how long is that going to last, right? And it's kind of one of those things, like, how do we, it's always about money, right? At the end of the day, it's like, how do we create a safer dive environment? But at the end of the day, it's it's hard. It's a tough situation.
You'd be surprised how much a small 6 liter of oxygen can actually do.
Yeah,
Honestly,
no,
yeah, is wonderful. Like, I can't stress it enough. People that get banned and do oxygen pretty much like immediately, and we have many. Like, we're very lucky in Koh Tao. All dive shop have an oxygen tank on board, and it's being used. Not people don't get refused oxygen, because I've heard like very nightmare story from places in Egypt and others where people get refused oxygen on board, and I'm like, why? Like, it makes no sense. Oxygen, in like, as soon as you get it, it's so much better for your body. Like, you can see rushes sometimes just disappear. It's like, it's that wonderful. But obviously, as you said, sometimes you need a chamber, you need more treatment. So I hope that we can get chamber back open and actually a network that is a bit better. I mean, it is part when we do expedition. I will always, like, as the medic and the responsible man on the group, I always have to look into those things. So, like, where's the nearest hospital? Where's the nearest chamber? Where's the nearest deep chamber? Because obviously, when you start to go deeper, you may need more than just a table 6 or something like this, which is like the standard 18-meter standard of care. So where do we go? How do we contact emergency, and etc. So Dan is a fantastic resource, and I mean, I'm a big partner with Dan, and Dan has a fantastic resource to actually go through, and they're very helpful as well. My first experience with Dan was as a diver. I wasn't working with them again, but I got COVID during a trip in Mexico. I was diving. I was doing cave diving. That was literally 2021. Like, it was the worst time to go there. I needed to get my head clear. So what did I do? It's fine. You don't get COVID. You're just gonna go to the biggest place where there is COVID there, and I'm just gonna fly, and it's all gonna be fine. Obviously, didn't. Flew to the US, went down to Cozumel, went down to COVID. No mask, no restriction. Party life, great. 4 days later, I got COVID and was diving during my COVID. So even though Dan didn't cover it because it was obviously the exclusion policy, and I knew that 100%, they still contacted me, took care of me. I had a phone call every 3 to 4 hours to make sure I was okay. I had a list of the doctor here. I had a lot of recommendation to go back to diving. I mean, it was much more than just, most insurance would have said to you, hey, thank you very much, we don't cover. Dan has always been taking, like Dan Europe especially, has always been taking the extra mile to answer a question of the community, even though they are not a member. So regardless who you are, regardless if you are insured to Dan or not, you can get a phone call to Dan and ask them, and they will tell you what they will recommend to you. They will tell you what's the first aid or where the chamber is, and etc. And they won't charge you a cent. And I think that's
awesome.
That's pretty awesome, you know. So, you know, when I started to work with them, I was like, okay, like on top of this, I like diving medicine, I like Dan, I like those things, and you know, it's always together with chamber and then emergency diving medicine during expedition. Yeah, that's the whole background of the thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I like huge shout out to Dan in general because of the information and the resources that they provide for the whole dive community as a whole. I couldn't even imagine a scuba world without Dan. Like I wouldn't even want to imagine, just because it's the amount of resources. Because I know that there's most. It's funny, every time you go and you're like, oh, you need to go get a dive medical for this course or that course or whatever. You go to your doctor. Most doctors don't know much about diving, whereas Dan, you can go and say, oh, these are actual doctors that know about the diving, the diving related problems that can arise. Because most doctors don't. Last couple questions before I let you go. So it's almost like a full, I guess it was like a full circle moment, because you said your first time in the water, there was no BCD, just a tank, little plastic harness. And then recently you just went and you tried out the new, it is new, the Avelo system. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with that, the whole unit and everything?
Sure, of course. So I ended up in Malaysia trying the Avelo System during one of those events. I knew about the concept for a while, and I was like, it's very odd, like I understand a bit the engineering behind it, and as any good skeptic diving instructor and dive person, I'm like, that looks like a scam. It looks like one of those, those scam when they're like, there is this tiny half a liter bottle that you can pump with your bike pump and stuff. And I was like, must be something like this. And then they went to I think it was Boat or Dima, and they got I think it was Boat, and they got like innovation prize. I'm like, okay, that's, now we're talking about something different. And then Shearwater went on board and was like, hey, we're gonna develop something for it. I'm like, okay, that means that there is much more than just like, if Shearwater is there, that means something must be definitely interesting. So the concept, for those of you guys that don't know, is that there is no BCD. We're starting the dive pretty much neutrally buoyant, and you can, with a piston, which is like kind of piston system, basically pouring water in there, compress an inner membrane where the gas is, and keep the buoyancy neutral. That means that it's super light. It's made out of carbon fiber. It's 300 bar tanks, so the pressure can actually increase during a dive, which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen an SPG going up. and it's super light. So I actually missed the system, to be honest with you. It's very nice. It's super light. It's super easy to go through. I think the walking around with is very nice. I think it's a step in the right direction. Why? I think it's when you think of diving, like, we've been innovating on the same thing over and over again, right? So we've been doing BCD in the 80s, that started to be in the 80s, 90s. And then from them, we're still doing the BCD the same way. We change a few things, we change a bit of material here and there, we design a few things, we modify a bit, but it's still the same thing, right? It's still a BCD. At the end, it's still there. I was very it's very intriguing, because there's a company that actually come there and trying to disrupt the market and say, hey, you don't need that thing anymore. You don't need this, you don't need that. Let's do it something different. Let's just take diving back to basics, and then see what we actually really need nowadays with the technology we have, and then start to rebuild it. And even before me testing the system, I think we need to give them a lot of credit for that, because there's not so many companies that decided to push forward diving and then reinvent the wheel. Now, diving the system, And I don't know if you have tried it, but it's odd. So when you jump from the boat, I think that's where it's very started. You jump from the boat and you go literally sinking already. So I'm very negative by default, but like you're not raising up to the surface, you're staying there. You have to be a bit careful. At the surface, it's not really the most comfortable thing because you're not really buoyant. So the system wants to, it doesn't want to make you float, so it's not that easy. But as soon as you're diving, it's very light. Like I did a video about that on YouTube, but as I said there, it's pretty much like putting stabilization on your camera. Like you had all of those jitter before, and then when you're moving left and right, your camera bounces and you have all of those micro thing. And then nowadays you have stabilization hyper smooth activated, and then everything looks like buttery smooth, even though you are like rock climbing or like descending I don't know, some crazy downhill with your bike or something. But it's pretty much the same thing in diving. So it's not changing. It's still scuba diving, right? You're breathing from a tank underwater, and it's still the same thing, but you don't have to think too much about breathing. And it's like for photography, like I remember like I was in that place in Malaysia in the Perhentians, and I was probably at like 2.5 meters or something, which is very hard to maintain buoyancy, even though you are still like very experienced diver, you can do it. But like I'm taking pictures of an open water diver that has 14 dive, and she's on an Avelo system as well, and we both at 2.5 meter, and none of us are going up or down. We're literally at 2.3 and we're staying there stable. And I just realized I'm like that I have almost 8,500 dives. She has 13, and we're both of us literally at the same buoyancy level. How fantastic is that? And that's pretty much that's basically what's my experience of the system. It's not like, I see people, I get 3 times the amount of air I had before, and I don't think it's that true unless you put it at 300 bar, which we didn't. We had it at 200. It's only 10 liter, so you get a little bit less consumption if you have a perfect buoyancy, like, and the same work of breathing between your standard scuba system that is 11.5 and an Avelo system. But the comfort, the effort and the comfort you have in the water is just so different. It's just super fun. You're super fast, like you can swim fast, and you get there very, very fast, and you don't have to add air, remove air, whatever. You're always naturally buoyant, and you can see it on your computer. Like they have this partnership with Shearwater, when you can see the buoyancy in real time, your work of breathing, the current like percentage of gas remaining, which again, like I think we talk about Avelo a lot in the tank system, but I think there is a lot of things that they are doing outside of it. They have this percentage of gas remaining, and I think this is great, right? Because what if we stop using bar or PSI? I have no clue what a PSI is, right? I know roughly like 2000 PSI, 3000 PSI, whatever. But if you take a normal standard open water diver, or even like a DM, as long as DM is Texas, and you bring them here, that everybody uses bar, wouldn't it be much, much more easier if you knew in percentage of gas remaining how much gas you have in your tank? Well, of course it would. Everybody would know. You don't need to know the pressure. You know that I have 20% of gas remaining. You don't have 40% of gas remaining. And those are all of the small innovations that I think they are bringing to the table, which are like, they are in the fine print, because the new system is being pushed forward, because obviously this is what they're pushing forward. But they have all of those integrations that are very, very cool. And this is where also I see a very big shift in the industry moving forward. If we can stop using PSI or bar, we can just use percentage of gas remaining, then like we are all equal, and we have a bit more safety because we all have the same thing, and when we understand much better, and a new diver wouldn't have to understand, 200 bar is full, 50 bar is like a reserve, so we want to be there. It's not really, it's a proxy. It's a good way to start to know the pressure, because it's a pressure unit, but it doesn't mean anything. If I tell you, you have 100% air in your tank, you're only at 40%, we start to go up at 40. Much easier.
I was gonna say that's funny, because I too was a skeptic. I I have not tried it, so maybe by the time this, well, no, I don't think by the time this comes out I'll have tried it, because I do plan on trying it. But I was very much, because I remember when it got not released, that's not the right word, but when I remember first hearing about it, announced that it was I think it was like 2022, 2021, I can't remember. And I remember hearing about it, and same thing, I was like, oh, this is like another fad of the week or whatnot. And then the first time I actually put eyes on it was at ADEX earlier this year, and kind of the same thing. Like I heard about it, and then when you hear companies jumping on board, like when Shearwater was getting behind it, I was like, okay, there's something there, because Shearwater is they're kind of an innovator. They've pushed dive computers to a whole nother level. Then I started, it starts to pique my interest more, and so I actually have had a chance to speak to Aviad, I think that's his name, Aviad, the inventor of it. To be honest, I'll full on admit this, so I had a chance to look at it a little bit more in depth at Mighty, the Malaysia International Dive Expo, just a few months back, and there was some presentations on it. I was chatting with people about it, but I didn't actually get a chance to speak to Aviad. So even then, I was still a little bit skeptical. But when I had, because he's been on here for the podcast, and when I was able to chat with him about it, he was able to explain it the best out of everybody that I had spoken to. And I was like, wow, that actually is very innovative, and kind of like the points that you were just making, like, hey, he is, kind of going against the industry. He's coming in with this groundbreaking new stuff, and I'm very curious to see where it's going to go, because of the fact that, because I even said it, I was like, man, they have a very big uphill battle, because they're literally trying to rock this industry that when people get set in their ways, they're set in their ways, and there's no changing people's minds, right? And I'm like, there's a very big uphill battle, but I feel like having a conversation with him completely flipped that switch, where I'm like, okay, I'm willing to go try this. And some of the things that he was kind of his future vision, things that he wants to do with it, I'm like, man, that you're talking 2100 here, right? 100 years in the future. This is some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, when I did an interview with him as well, and his original thing was he had a regulator that could, every time you would breathe in, it would remove 100 grams and put a little bit of water in the tank all the time, so it was fully automatic. And I'm like, how crazy is that,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The man is thinking in a different planet. But honestly, it's been like I met him. He was the person that introduced me to Avelo. So I was extremely lucky for him to be my instructor. So I had obviously 1 billion questions. and that's the same thing, when I came back here to Koh Tao, the first day I came back, I had people come to me and say, hey Max, I saw you tried the Avelo. It looks like a scam. How good is it? Literally, if you know how many people ask me, is it a scam or not? And I'm like, no, it's actually very real. It's actually very, very good diving. It's actually very interesting. It's, especially our industry is very set in that way. We found a way, this is the way, and why are we trying to do something? Because we don't need it, And so I think that, we need to get more innovation. We need to get more technology.
Oh, I completely agree.
There is this Garmin just received. I don't know if you've seen that. 2 days ago, they just have their first beacon locator for divers. Have you seen this?
Yes.
And you're like, how cool is it? You can see your entire dive people, your entire team down at 100-meter depth, and you know exactly where they are. Safety.
No, I'm
safety,
huge fan. Yeah.
And it's the same with Avelo. People are like, oh, but it's less safe. I'm like, why? Oh, because you need a battery. I'm like, okay, so why do you think it's less safe? Oh, because if works by battery, you cannot put water in there. Like, yeah, but you're already naturally buoyant. So okay, you have a problem with your kit, so that means that you don't start positive, you start neutral. So you're basically gonna have maybe at the end of your dive plus half a kilo. Yeah, you can, you can literally, you don't even need the system to do it. You can do it with your lung. You can exhale a bit less gas, and you will still be like comfortable. And people were like, oh, but yeah, what if you lose all of the gas? I was like, well, have you seen what happens if you have a BCD fully inflating itself? Like how bad it is. And I've seen quite a few. Like we have a red brand that I would not mention. Kids right now at the dive center I've been working with for a little bit here in Koh Tao, brand new, okay, BCD, 3 weeks old, in their scuba range that is meant for dive center. 3 of them auto inflate, 3 of them, and this is new design. And I'm thinking, like, how can this be deemed more safe than a thing where I understand the physics behind it and there is literally no way this can happen?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I have had a few conversations with people, and I was telling them about because I feel like at this point you're kind of, if you are somewhat involved in scuba diving, like you've heard of the Avelo system, right? And there's a huge kind of wave of people that are like, no, like we'll just stick to our ways. And I was trying to kind of explain, I can't even explain it, so I'm like, I don't want to explain it, just wait till the interview comes out. You can hear it from, direct from the source, because it's like something that I can't even really explain, but I'm like, he sold me on it after just having a conversation with him. And I think it's one of those things that dive by dive, it's slowly gonna gain traction. And because I am a big fan of technology when it comes to diving, right? Like if you think about it, it's either a dive computer. I kind of made the transition to transmitters a few years back. I do like that new wave of technology. I know that there's always a debate, right? Like there's always going to be a debate, especially the tech with the mechanical world, whatever you want to call it. But so for me not to at least, I don't want to say embrace it, but just find out more information about it. That's why I'm like, okay, this is something that I have to look into. And I don't know if it'll happen this year. I spoke to Anand. I think he's going to be back in August or something, but I don't know if I don't know if we'll overlap time. But I would like to at least go try it out and give my own opinion, as opposed to, the hearing the nay or the. But I'm actually very excited to see where it's going to go, because of the fact that he's got some very sound, not advice, but information. Like he knows what he's talking about. Like 100%, the technology that he's designed, the design behind it. I'm like, man, this makes complete sense. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
I think what was very interesting as well is how fast you can get somebody diving with this. For me, it took me maybe half hour, but for my dive buddy that was an open water, it took also half hour. It's like, oh, if you feel like this, press here until this state is 0. Okay, fair. Like, I had somebody in my YouTube channel, when I posted the video about this, reply, oh, this system is gonna remove all of the skill of the diver. Is that a bad thing? Do you really want to teach buoyancy for 60, 70, 90 dives to somebody to get perfectly buoyant and stuff? Is this really what we want to try as an industry? Like, do we find pleasure in this? Like, I mean, I enjoy being naturally buoyant, but I don't need to feel like I need to spend 1,000 hours on somebody to make them but the best buoyancy in the world, and especially in the tech world. I think this has a fantastic application in the tech world, and it's gonna be very nice there.
Yeah. For sure.
Ask any tech diver, would you like to have a twin 300 10-liter tank that is always naturally buoyant? I mean, come on. It's like, isn't it self-explanatory? Yeah, of course. Please, just give me 10 of them.
It's it's one of those things, because if you look back at the history of scuba, when the BCD was introduced, that's going to kill people. People are, and it's funny that we're kind of, talking about going away from that. But when nitrox was introduced, right, voodoo gas, it was, I mean, there's huge stories all over the place where people are like, that's going to be the death of you. And I don't know if the transition will ever happen, but I mean, there's a lot of facts to support that it is the safer way to go, and we should be kind of getting away from air and it, yeah. So it's a whole thing.
I love diving in nitrox. I mean, I'm a GV diver as well, even though I don't always dive GV. I'm also a GV diver, and yeah, if I could, I would dive only nitrox.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. During the first dive, or even the first or second dive with him, I was already thinking like, how could I actually put that in a twin set? Like, so I need two palms, two things. Like if I could redundancy, maybe I could have a back plate, and then I could just sit them like this. The manifold would be probably a problem, but it's a scuba standard, so maybe, and I was already in my head, I was already gone, I was like, okay, I could make a twin set out of that.
That's funny. Yeah, I was literally, I think that was one of the first things I had a conversation with Anand about. I was like, can you side mount this?
You can side mount this, the same thing, you can put the pump and stuff, you can deconstruct it, put it under the bladder and making like nice and neat stuff, I don't see why you couldn't,
Oh, it's going to be... I'm excited to see where it's going to go for sure. Exactly. I'll embrace it. But so last question I have for you before I let you go. And I appreciate you, like I said, once again, I appreciate you making the time. Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast today. It's been an absolutely wonderful conversation, so thank you. But my last question for you is, so somebody that wants to get into the medical side of diving, a dive medic or a working at a hyperbaric chamber, I guess it's kind of a two-part question is, what is the type of mentality that they should have going into something like that, and what is the best way to move forward with something like that?
I think, in terms of mentality, I think you have to like people. You have to like people, you have to like working under pressure, and sometimes also working, like it can be long hours. So this is more like you have to care for people if you want to work in, I would say, in the medical field in general. If you don't care about them, it doesn't really work very well. So like a minimum of empathy, a minimum of like knowledge, and it's just a minimum of empathy. I think it would be like a bare minimum to have, but it's also we're here for people worst day, like they get hurt from their holidays and they're not happy, obviously. Sometimes we have very big cases which are like people are very, very hurt, and like it's a very different mentality. Like we have to be there for them. We just can't help them. A friend of mine expressed that very well the other day. She's a professional EMT in her country, so she's like, you can always, people put themselves in those situations. You can always help them getting out of it. There's nothing else you can do, and this is all we ask. All we ask to do is like trying to help people's bad day actually try to make it actually just back to normal. And it's a very mental thing. So that's more like part one of the question. And then part two, how to become there. Well, Dan does amazing training courses. I would recommend you to reach out to. You can reach out to me personally if you want. I'm very happy to see if I can find around you like training courses. But Dan has fantastic courses, DMT included, that you can be teach. Like there's the fantastic Chantal Newman that is teaching for Dan. That is incredible. I'm very looking forward because I'm gonna do my refresh there with her in the UK. Fantastic person. You have different organization. So depending on where you want to be part of the diving industry or the diving medicine, it could be like offshore rig. So it's going to be a bit of a different course, different accreditation. But there is plenty of options. You can also ask the chamber that is next to you. Mostly private ones are going to be much easier to enter in than hospital, because hospital you need to be a nurse, etc. So it can be a bit different. Also, it varies with local laws. But yeah, just you have to reach out. Just reach out to Dan. You can reach out to myself, and I'm sure we can find you something.
Awesome. Maxime, I once again want to thank you very much for coming on to the podcast today. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I look forward to trying the Avelo system and kind of seeing more of what you're doing, Bottomline Projects, things that you have going on in Koh Tao, and one of these days I'll have to make it. I still haven't been to Koh Tao yet, so one of these days I'll have to make it up there. I know, and come get a couple dives in and just hang out and grab a beer, man.
Definitely, 100%.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.